For millions of Americans, Social Security isn't just a government program. It's the difference between stability and crisis. Many people assume the only way to cut Social Security is to reduce benefit amounts, slashing the checks people receive. But there's a far more insidious method, one that allows cuts to happen while most people don't even notice, kicking people off the program entirely. Unlike across-the-board reductions, wrongful removals happen quietly, case by case, disproportionately harming the elderly, disabled, and poor, while those unaffected continue believing nothing has changed. It's a tactic that masks the true scale of the damage, making it easier to dismantle Social Security without sparking mass outrage. Now we're watching that tactic unfold. Billionaire Elon Musk, in his role at DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, has claimed that the government loses more than $1 trillion a year to fraud, waste, and abuse, with Social Security as a prime offender. His most shocking claim, that over $100 billion in Social Security payments go to dead people, some allegedly over 150 years old. These claims, repeated uncritically, create the illusion of a broken system hemorrhaging money. At first glance, it might seem like a scandal demanding immediate action, but the reality is far more mundane. Bad data doesn't equal fraud. Instead of addressing routine data issues, officials are setting up an excuse to purge recipients, framing real people as fraudsters, stripping them of benefits, and calling it efficiency. What we're witnessing isn't a crackdown on fraud, it's a manufactured crisis, carefully engineered to justify cutting Social Security in the most politically convenient way possible. But what about those records? How did this happen? Did this happen? The claim that Social Security is paying billions to the dead sounds shocking, until you realize it's based on bad data, not fraud. What actually happened? Someone ran a query on Social Security databases and found weird numbers. Whether they jumped to their conclusions or planned them out, I leave to you. Consider the facts. Most Social Security files were created long before digital systems existed, handwritten or typed on paper, later photographed for microfilm. When the government moved to computer systems in the 1980s, information did not transfer perfectly. Digitization involved early forms of imaging and character recognition software, working with inconsistent source material. So while many records have been scanned, that doesn't mean they're fully searchable or accurate. Much of the data still lives in outdated systems with missing or corrupted entries. Of course, Social Security records the status of death in addition to the date, which halts payments even if the date is missing, or else they couldn't stop payments until they were sure of the date, and we know that's not true. So consider Harold, born 1942, whose Social Security record was stored on microfilm and later digitized. Somewhere along the way, a clerical error garbled his birth date. An old typewritten 4 got read as a 1 when scanned, and some system has his birth date as 1912 now. Elon's fraud detection algorithm scanning the database says Harold is 113 instead of 83. This flags his record as suspicious and suspends his benefits. That is the default because, after all, if he's really alive, he'll complain. But Harold isn't dead. He's just a retiree in Ohio who suddenly finds himself cut off from the benefits he's depended on for years. No notice, they don't believe he's alive to get it. Just no more money in the bank. How much time do you think it's going to take Harold to get his benefits back? How much time is an 83-year-old man going to have to spend working on that? How much sooner is he going to die as a result? Musk's team ran an algorithmic scan of Social Security databases and flagged anomalies, like beneficiaries appearing to be 150 years old. But their analysis failed to account for a simple reality. Outdated government records don't always mean fraud. Many of these so-called impossible beneficiaries are just remnants of an incomplete data migration process. Some are inactive files that were never fully purged, while others exist because Social Security systems use placeholder values when certain dates are missing. The vast majority of these aren't real people cashing fraudulent checks. Social Security already has internal safeguards to catch real fraud, which is why improper payments, including payments to the deceased, make up less than 1% of total benefits. So those who are cashing benefits are real people, people who have no idea that the government screwed up a record at some point in the last 60 years. Yet, instead of questioning whether their own detection methods were flawed, Musk's team took these bad results at face value and declared a crisis. They treated gaps in Social Security's records as evidence of a mass theft rather than what they actually are, artifacts of outdated technology and bureaucratic workarounds. so their report was immediately seized upon as proof of systemic fraud. This kind of bad faith data analysis isn't just misleading, it's dangerous. Once a fraud crisis is declared, the political response is almost always a push for cost-cutting and purges. Bureaucrats, under pressure to clean up the rolls, will implement stricter verification requirements and aggressive eligibility reviews. And because Social Security databases are imperfect, the people most likely to get caught in the dragnet aren't fraudsters, but vulnerable individuals, seniors, disabled recipients, and low-income beneficiaries who suddenly find themselves wrongly cut off from their only source of income. In the end, this isn't about fixing Social Security, it's about dismantling it. By exploiting outdated records and using sloppy data analysis to stoke public outrage, Musk and his allies are manufacturing an excuse to shrink the program. They aren't solving fraud, they're creating a justification to kick people off their benefits. The consequences of this false fraud narrative are already taking shape. The SSA, under pressure to address Musk's allegations, has announced massive cost-cutting measures, including a hiring freeze, office closures, and major reductions in staffing. These cuts will not fix Social Security, they will cripple its ability to function. History shows us exactly what happens when bureaucratic purges like this occur. When states have attempted to purge voter rolls under the guise of removing fraud, legitimate voters, especially the elderly, disabled, and low-income individuals, have found themselves mistakenly disenfranchised. Now, the same logic is being applied to Social Security. If the SSA follows through with these fraud prevention efforts, we can expect thousands, possibly millions, of vulnerable individuals to suddenly find their benefits terminated. A simple database error, a clerical mistake, or even just the failure to respond to a government letter in time could result in someone being wrongly classified as deceased or ineligible. For those affected, the consequences will be immediate and devastating. Losing Social Security benefits means losing the ability to pay rent, buy medication, and afford basic necessities. Unlike voting, where an error may not be noticed until Election Day, losing Social Security benefits creates an urgent crisis that few people can afford to navigate. But there is another more insidious goal behind this so-called fraud crackdown, setting the stage for the privatization of Social Security. This isn't just about cutting benefits. It's about making people want to leave Social Security on their own. If elites could have gutted the system simply by declaring it broken, they would have done it long ago. Instead, they need people to lose faith in it first. That's where the fraud scare and mass removals come in. By randomly kicking people off benefits, often through bureaucratic errors, they create fear and uncertainty. If people believe they could be next, that their safety net could vanish without warning, they'll start looking for an escape. And just as that panic takes hold, the solution appears, an offer to take your Social Security savings and go private. It won't be forced, at least not at first, just an option, a way to take control of your own retirement. But once a significant number of people opt out, the system is weakened and becomes unsustainable, so more people flee. Full privatization becomes inevitable. And what happens then? Retirees and disabled Americans would no longer have a guaranteed income. They'd have private investment accounts subject to market swings, fees, and Wall Street greed. The safety net that protected generations would become a profit-making scheme, enriching financial firms while leaving ordinary people at risk. The same elites claiming to fix Social Security would be the ones cashing in on its collapse. This was never about fraud. It's about breaking trust in the system, pushing people out and turning Social Security into just another financial product, one that benefits the wealthy while leaving everyone else behind. The most important thing anyone can do right now is understand what's really happening and make sure others do too. Share this message. This attack on Social Security isn't about fraud, it's about control. It's about shaking people's faith in the system, pushing them out, and paving the way for privatization. And it works best when people don't see it coming. The lie is simple, that Social Security is full of fraud and waste, that cuts are necessary, that people should take their money and run. But the truth is just as simple. The fraud they're pointing to is a fiction, manufactured by bad data and political opportunism. The real goal is to make the system seem broken so they can dismantle it without a fight, because there's profit to be made. The billions that currently flow to retirees, disabled individuals, and survivors of deceased workers, They want that money in private investment accounts, skimming fees, gambling it in the markets, and turning guaranteed benefits into just another speculative asset for Wall Street to play with. Until one day, it's just gone with one more Wall Street bubble. That's why the biggest danger isn't just the policy changes. It's letting this narrative spread unchallenged. Once enough people believe Social Security is unstable, the fight is already lost. The best way to stop this is to expose the deception before it takes hold. Share the truth, challenge the false claims, and don't let this issue fade into the background. Because if they succeed in making people afraid, if they convince enough of the public that Social Security is doomed, then the fight won't be about protecting benefits. It'll be about bringing them back from the dead. And by then, it may be too late.